Yes, a sourdough starter can absolutely go bad. And it's more common for a brand new starter to go bad than a more established starter. Established starters are more resilient and typically don't go bad as easily. But if you see something like mold growing in your starter, anything that looks fuzzy, that is a sign your starter has gone bad. And then typically if you see something that looks like orange or pink spots or streaks, that is also a sign that a bad bacteria has gotten into your starter. And you do need to toss that and start new. Hopefully you have some backup starter in your refrigerator, like maybe a jar of discard that you could pull some from and start feeding to have active starter again. But those are the two main signs that you know your starter has gone bad. Now there are other things that might happen that might look concerning that are not actually concerning. And the main one you might see is something called hooch. This is what hooch looks like. It is a liquid that forms on your starter. Sometimes it looks like a very concerning color. Sometimes it looks black or gray or brown, and the longer your starter sits unfed, the more hooch it will form, because this is a byproduct of the fermentation. It is the alcohol creation that is happening from your yeast being hungry, and it's just a sign that your starter is hungry. In fact, it's a sign that your starter is alive. It is actively creating this hooch. So I typically pour it off. Some people will stir it back in. If you want a very sour starter, it actually will add some more sour flavor to your starter. But if you see hooch on your starter, it's just a sign you need to feed your starter. It doesn't mean your starter has gone bad. Also, when your starter gets very, very hungry, the smell becomes very, very pungent. It will start smelling like acetone or paint thinner. It will kind of smack you in the face when you open your jar. Again, it's a byproduct of the fermentation. It is telling you it is hungry. I have had people tell me in the past that they threw their starter out because it smelled fermented. That's the point. We are fermenting. A sourdough starter is a fermentation process. So smelling fermented means it's good, it's active, it's alive. We want fermentation smells, but typically a really, really pungent, like very smack you in the face smell is it's hungry. It needs to be fed. Another thing that you might see if your starter gets neglected is something called calm yeast. It looks like a white film or kind of like a curdled film that forms over the top of your starter. It also will not smell pleasant when calm yeast is forming in your starter. It's because your starter is being neglected, and the yeast that you really want to leaven your bread can't really thrive in that environment, and it's allowing this other yeast to take over. It is a very normal part of the fermentation process. It does not mean your sourdough starter is bad. You can absolutely come back from having calm yeast in your starter. You can just scrape this off and then start feeding your starter regularly, babying it a little bit, and it should go away. However, if this happens to my starter and I have backup starter in my refrigerator, like discard that I'm not feeding that doesn't have calm yeast on it, I will typically just toss what's in this jar and just bring out some of my unfed starter and just start feeding that. So that's typically my process, but this is not dangerous. It's just not going to make good bread. So if you see this in your starter, it doesn't mean your starter has gone completely bad. It just means that your starter is telling you, hey, I need some attention. Please feed me. So these are some things that you might notice in your starter.